Story number 1. Shadows in the Snowbound Dorm. The howling wind outside was a constant reminder of the isolation that enveloped us. I still remember the night the storm hit Pinecrest University like it was yesterday. We were a group of 5 friends, Jake, Emily, Sarah, Marcus, and me, seeking refuge in the old dormitory that stood as the last bastion against the raging blizzard. Little did we know, the walls of that dorm held secrets far darker than the tempest outside. I'm Alex, and this is the story of how a simple snowstorm turned our sanctuary into a nightmare from which we might never escape. It was supposed to be a weekend retreat. Finals were looming, and we needed a break. The Pinecrest Dormitory, an aging building with a storied past, seemed perfect. Nestled on the outskirts of town, it offered solitude and a semblance of peace. The campus was beautiful in winter, with snow-covered grounds and twinkling lights, but as the weather forecast predicted a severe blizzard, we decided to extend our stay, thinking it would be a fun adventure. The dorm was grand yet eerie, with high ceilings, long corridors, and an air of neglect that gave it a haunted vibe. The fire was the first sign something was off. The main heater broke down just as we settled in, leaving us shivering despite the layers of blankets we piled on ourselves. But we made do, lighting candles and sharing stories to pass the time. Jake, our unofficial leader, suggested we explore the building. There's something fascinating about old places like this. Imagine the history trapped within these walls, he said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. As we wandered through the dimly lit halls, we stumbled upon a locked door at the end of a corridor. Intrigued, Marcus managed to pick the lock, and we pushed the heavy door open. Inside was a room filled with old medical equipment and faded photographs of patients, their eyes hauntingly blank. It took us a moment to realize we had discovered the old Pinecrest Mental Hospital, which had burned down a decade ago after a tragic fire that claimed the lives of many patients. "This place gives me the creeps," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "We should leave it alone," Sarah added, her skepticism wavering. But curiosity had already taken hold. Over the next few days, we couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Strange noises echoed through the dormitory, whispers in the dead of night, footsteps where no one walked, and shadows that seemed to move on their own. It was as if the spirits of the past were trying to communicate, or perhaps warn us. One particularly cold night, the storm intensified, cutting off power and rendering all electronic devices useless. The dorm's doors, which had been easily opened before, now refused to budge. Panic set in as we realized we were trapped. The temperature plummeted, and our breaths became visible in the frigid air. We huddled together, trying to stay warm, but the oppressive atmosphere weighed heavily on us. "We need to stay calm and find a way out," Jake insisted, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. As we attempted to force the doors open, Emily began to recount the stories she had heard about the old mental hospital. They say the patients were subjected to inhumane treatments, and during the fire, many were left to perish without help. Their spirits never left, and they haunt this place, seeking vengeance or perhaps closure. Her words seemed to resonate with the strange occurrences we were experiencing. Objects moved on their own, doors slammed shut without warning, and the whispers grew louder, more insistent. One night, Sarah disappeared without a trace, leaving us terrified and desperate. We searched every corner of the dormitory, but there was no sign of her. It was as if the very walls had swallowed her whole. Fear morphed into paranoia. Accusations flew, tempers flared, and the bonds of friendship began to fray. Jake and Marcus were the first to turn on each other, blaming one another for Sarah's disappearance. Emily and I tried to mediate, but the tension was unbearable. The presence in the dorm seemed to thrive on our fear, manipulating us into madness. One evening, as the storm raged outside, we decided to revisit the old mental hospital room, hoping to uncover clues that might explain the haunting. The door creaked open, revealing the same room filled with remnants of a tragic past. As we stepped inside, the temperature dropped even further, our breaths forming icy clouds in the air. The photographs on the walls seemed to come alive, the eyes of the patients following our every move. Jake found an old journal among the debris, its pages yellowed and brittle. "Look at this," he said, his voice shaky. The entries detailed the horrors endured by the patients, the neglect, and the desperation that led to the uprising during the fire. The last entry was particularly chilling. They will not rest until their suffering is avenged. The storm will never end until we are free. As we read the journal, the room began to shift. The walls seemed to close in, the air thick with anger and sorrow. Shadows twisted into grotesque shapes, and the whispers turned into agonized screams. The spirits of the past were revealing their torment, their inability to move on, trapped in an endless cycle of pain and revenge. Suddenly, the door slammed shut, and we were plunged into darkness. The storm outside intensified, the wind howling like the wails of the damned. Panic set in as we struggled to find an escape, but the room seemed to have no exit. The spirits manifested around us, their forms ethereal and menacing. They circled us, their eyes filled with rage and longing. One by one, they began to attack. Jake was the first to fall, his screams echoing through the room as an unseen force tore him apart. Marcus tried to fight back, but the spirits overwhelmed him, dragging him into the darkness. Emily and I clung to each other, trying to stay sane amidst the chaos. The very essence of the dormitory seemed to warp reality, forcing us to confront our deepest fears and regrets. In the midst of the turmoil, I remembered the journal's last entry. The storm will never end until we are free. Perhaps our only chance was to help the spirits find peace. Summoning every ounce of courage, I reached out to Emily. "We need to help them," I said, my voice barely a whisper over the cacophony. We began to perform a ritual described in the journal, hoping to break the cycle of vengeance and release the tormented souls. Chanting the ancient words, we felt a surge of energy emanate from the room. The spirits resisted, their anguish and anger pushing back against our efforts. But we persisted, our determination fueled by the desperate need to survive. As the ritual reached its climax, the storm outside began to subside, the howling wind giving way to an eerie silence. The spirits' forms began to dissolve, their tortured expressions softening as they found the peace they had long been denied. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the doors of the dormitory creaked open, revealing the calm after the storm. Exhausted and traumatized, Emily and I stumbled out of the old mental hospital room, the weight of what we had endured pressing down on us. The storm had passed, leaving behind a tranquil winter landscape, the snow glistening under the pale light of dawn. The dormitory, once a place of fear, now felt almost peaceful, the restless spirits finally at rest. In the aftermath, the authorities arrived, baffled by our story. They dismissed it as hallucinations brought on by the isolation and stress of the storm. But Emily and I knew the truth. We had faced the wrath of the past and emerged, scarred but alive. The memories of that night lingered, a haunting reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead. Pinecrest University never fully recovered from the events of that winter. The dormitory was closed, its halls left to decay and fall into disrepair. Students whispered about the tragedy, and the legend of the snowbound dorm became a cautionary tale, a story told in hushed tones around fireplaces during the coldest months. Years have passed, and the snowstorms have become less frequent, but the memory of that night remains vivid. I often find myself drawn to the edge of the old campus, staring at the abandoned dormitory, wondering what became of the spirits and the friends we lost. The shadows in the snowbound dorm serve as a chilling reminder that some places hold onto their past too tightly, and that the spirits of the forgotten can never truly rest. Sometimes, on the quietest nights, I swear I can hear the faint echoes of those tortured souls, whispering through the wind, reminding me of the horrors that unfolded within those walls. It's a reminder to respect the past, to honor those who suffered, and to understand that some storms leave scars that never fully heal. Story number 2. The Winter Curse of the Forgotten Village. The decision to escape the relentless grind of city life with a winter getaway was, in hindsight, a mistake I wouldn't make again. But at 28, surrounded by the chaos of deadlines and the incessant hum of urban life, the allure of a secluded mountain resort was too tempting to resist. My friends, Jake, Emily, Sarah, and Marcus, and I had been planning this trip for months, eager to disconnect and embrace the tranquility of nature blanketed in snow. We set out in a rented SUV, our spirits high and our minds already picturing cozy evenings by the fire and exhilarating days on the slopes. The drive was long but scenic, winding through dense forests and across expansive plains where the snow lay thick and undisturbed. As the day wore on, the sky darkened, and the weather forecast that had promised clear skies turned ominous. A blizzard was rolling in, faster than any of us had anticipated. By late afternoon, the snow was coming down in sheets, reducing visibility to mere feet. The roads, usually well maintained, were quickly becoming treacherous. Our GPS signal flickered and died, leaving us without any guidance. Jake, ever the optimist, suggested we press on to the resort, convinced that it was just a temporary storm. But as twilight approached, the landscape transformed into a monochromatic wasteland, and it became clear that our initial plan was no longer viable. "Maybe we should find somewhere to wait it out," Emily suggested, her voice tinged with fear as she glanced nervously at the swirling snow outside. Jake shook his head. "No way. The resort is still ahead. We can make it if we keep moving." Reluctantly, we continued, the SUV struggling against the heavy snowfall. Hours passed, and the storm only intensified, enveloping us in a suffocating whiteout. Just as hope began to wane, the outline of a village emerged through the blinding snow. It was quaint, with old-fashioned cottages and a central square, all seemingly untouched by time. Relief washed over us. We had found shelter. "Let's pull over," Marcus said, steering the vehicle toward the small village. As we approached, an eerie silence settled over the place, broken only by the howling wind and the crunch of snow under our tires. We parked the SUV in front of what appeared to be a general store. The windows were frosted over, and the sign above the door creaked in the wind. With no other options, we decided to seek refuge inside. The door swung open easily, revealing a dimly lit interior filled with dust-covered shelves and remnants of a bygone era. "Hello?" I called out, but no one answered. The store was empty, abandoned, as if frozen in time. Jake tried the door, but it wouldn't budge. "It's locked," he said, frustration evident in his voice. We pushed again, and to our surprise, the door swung open effortlessly, granting us entry. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old wood and something else, something metallic and unsettling. We spread out, searching for a place to warm up. Emily found a small kitchenette area and started a fire in the old stone fireplace, while the rest of us huddled together, trying to make ourselves comfortable amidst the relics of the past. As night fell, the storm raged outside, the wind howling like a chorus of lost souls. The village was eerily silent, the only sound the crackling of the fire and the relentless snowstorm. We shared stories to pass the time, our conversations growing quieter as the hours dragged on. Around midnight, a loud crash echoed from outside, followed by the sound of breaking glass. Startled, we rushed to the window, but visibility was nearly zero. The wind had knocked over a few branches, causing debris to scatter across the snow-covered ground. "Probably just a tree," Marcus said, trying to reassure us, though his voice wavered slightly. But then we heard it, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper carried by the wind. It was unintelligible, but the tone was unmistakably hostile. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, filling the room with a sense of impending doom. "Did you hear that?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide with fear. Before anyone could respond, the temperature in the room plummeted. Our breaths became visible, swirling in the frigid air. The fire sputtered and dimmed, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. The whispers morphed into anguished cries, echoing the pain and despair of unseen entities. Jake, ever the skeptic, tried to rationalize the phenomena. "It's just the storm messing with our heads. Maybe some pipes froze or something." But his words did little to quell the growing unease. As the night progressed, strange things began to happen. Objects moved on their own, shelves rattled, and items toppled off tables without explanation. The temperature continued to drop, and the oppressive atmosphere weighed heavily on us. Around 3 a.m., Emily woke us with a scream. She had vanished from her spot by the fire, leaving behind only the faint smell of smoke. Panic set in as we searched the room frantically, but there was no sign of her. The whispers had grown into cacophonous wails, and the room seemed to close in around us. "We need to leave," Sarah cried, tears streaming down her face. "She's gone." But when we attempted to open the door, it wouldn't budge. Panic morphed into desperation as we realized we were trapped in this forsaken village, victims of an ancient curse. Determined to find Emily and escape, we decided to explore the village. Bundling up against the biting cold, we ventured out into the storm, the wind biting into our faces as we trudged through knee-deep snow. The village was eerily silent, the only light coming from the dim glow of old street lamps that flickered intermittently. As we wandered through the deserted streets, we stumbled upon an old church at the village center. Its steeple stood tall against the darkened sky, and the stained glass windows depicted scenes of sorrow and anguish. The door creaked open as we approached, inviting us into the darkness. Inside, the air was heavy with sorrow. The pews were covered in a thick layer of dust, and the altar was adorned with decaying flowers. As we moved deeper into the church, the whispers grew louder, resonating off the stone walls like the cries of the damned. In the center of the sanctuary stood a figure cloaked in darkness, its presence commanding and malevolent. The whispers coalesced into a single, chilling voice. "You trespass on sacred ground. Leave now, or suffer the consequences." Jake stepped forward, attempting to confront the apparition. "Who are you? What do you want from us?" The figure remained silent, its form shifting and blending with the shadows. Suddenly, the church doors slammed shut, and the temperature plummeted even further. The whispers intensified, surrounding us from all directions. Without warning, the figure lunged forward, its icy fingers reaching out to ensnare us. We scattered, fleeing the church and the wrathful spirit that pursued us. The storm seemed to grow fiercer, as if the village itself was conspiring against our escape. Back at the general store, we regrouped, our faces pale and eyes wide with terror. Emily was nowhere to be seen, and the realization hit us hard: we were part of the curse, and one by one, we were destined to disappear, becoming the very ghosts that haunted this forgotten village. As days turned into nights, each passing day saw another friend vanish without a trace. Sarah was the next to go, her disappearance marked by the chilling whispers that now seemed to follow us incessantly. Jake and Marcus, once the pillars of our group, became paranoid and mistrustful, their minds unraveling under the weight of fear and isolation. One evening, with only Jake and me left, we made a desperate decision to confront the source of the curse. Armed with whatever courage we could muster, we returned to the church, hoping to find a way to break the spell that bound us to this forsaken place. Inside, the air was thick with malevolence. The once silent figure now stood before us, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "You cannot escape," it intoned, its voice a blend of sorrow and rage. "This village is eternal, and so are you." Jake, driven to madness, attacked the figure, but his efforts were futile. The spirit effortlessly repelled him, sending him crashing to the ground. I realized then that there was no way out, no way to save my friends or myself from this eternal winter. As the first snowflakes of a new storm began to fall, I understood the true nature of the curse. We were doomed to remain in this village, our souls bound to protect it from any who dared to trespass. The snow would never cease, and neither would our torment. Now, years later, I remain a ghostly guardian of the forgotten village, the whispers my constant companions, and the snow my unending shroud. I watch as new travelers, like us, stumble upon this cursed place, their hope flickering like the dying light of our once bright spirits. And as they vanish one by one, the cycle continues, our souls forever entwined with the winter curse that binds us to this desolate, snowy realm. No one hears our cries over the howling wind, and no one sees the tears that fall from our ethereal eyes. We are the protectors of the village, the ghosts of betrayal and vengeance, trapped in an eternal winter of our own making. And so, the curse endures, a silent warning to those who dare to seek refuge in the snowy mountains, a reminder that some places are better left forgotten, and some curses, once unleashed, are impossible to break. Story number 3. Frostbound Malevolence. I still remember the first snowfall of that Christmas as if it were etched into my very soul. The sky was a steely gray, and the air carried the crisp scent of pine and the faint aroma of cinnamon from our kitchen. My family and I lived in a small town nestled against the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, where winters were harsh and isolation was a given. But that year, our secluded home harbored a secret that would plunge us into a nightmare beyond our worst imaginings. It was Christmas Eve, and the house was bustling with the usual preparations. My younger brother, Tommy, was eagerly helping our mother decorate the tree, his small hands struggling with the ornaments. My parents were busy in the kitchen, their laughter mingling with the sound of sizzling pans. I, 16 and restless, found myself drawn to the old stone cave at the edge of our property, a relic from generations past, long abandoned and shrouded in local folklore. The cave had always intrigued me. Its entrance was partially concealed by overgrown brambles and thick layers of ice that glittered under the winter sun. Legends whispered that it was a place of ancient magic, a sealed gateway to forces beyond our understanding. Most dismissed these tales as mere superstition, but as I stood there on that cold December day, curiosity gnawed at me relentlessly. Earlier that morning, while exploring the attic, I had stumbled upon a dusty chest filled with relics from our ancestors. Among the assortment of old tools and faded photographs, I found a peculiar bundle wrapped in heavy cloth. Carefully, I unwrapped it to reveal strange, dark stones and fragments of what looked like old runes carved into the surface. My father had always been a practical man, dismissing the mystical tales, but there was something about these objects that felt wrong. Driven by an inexplicable urge, I decided to take the stones and artifacts to the cave. The journey was short, just a mile through thick woods blanketed in snow, but the descent into the cave felt like entering another realm. The air inside was cold and damp, the walls slick with moisture that made every step treacherous. In the heart of the cavern, I found a flat stone surface, perfect for my unintended project. With trembling hands, I began to sculpt the snow, using the enchanted stones as a focal point. The snow molded itself under my touch, shaping into a figure that felt almost alive. By the time I finished, the snowman stood tall and imposing, its coal eyes gleaming with an unnatural light. I stepped back, admiring my creation, oblivious to the dark energy that had been unleashed. That night, as we gathered around the fireplace, the storm outside intensified, transforming the landscape into a frozen wasteland. The house was warm and filled with holiday cheer, but an unsettling feeling settled over me. I couldn't shake the image of the snowman, its eyes following me even in my mind's eye. Midnight approached, and the howling wind outside seemed to echo the whispers in my mind. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted, and an eerie silence enveloped the house. The snow outside no longer ceased, piling higher against the windows and doors. My family dismissed it as a fierce winter storm, but deep down, I sensed something malevolent was at play. The next morning, the storm showed no signs of abating. We tried to venture outside, but the snow was relentless, turning our world into a monochromatic prison. It wasn't long before we realized we were not alone. One by one, my friends, Jake, Emily, Sarah, and Marcus, began to disappear without a trace. Panic set in as we searched every corner of the house and the surrounding woods, but there was no sign of them. It was as if the snow itself had swallowed them whole. Desperation led us back to the cave. The snowman still stood there, untouched by time, its coal eyes seeming to burn with a sinister intelligence. As night fell, we understood the truth. We had become part of an ancient curse. The snowman was no ordinary creation. It was a vessel for an evil entity that had been sealed within the cave for centuries. Each night, it claimed another soul, binding them as eternal protectors of the forgotten village. Determined to save my family and friends, we delved into the history of the cave. Old journals and faded photographs revealed that our ancestors had once been part of a secluded village that thrived in harmony with nature. But envy and fear brewed when a powerful witch, betrayed by the villagers, cast a curse to protect herself. The snowstorm was her doing, ensuring that the village remained hidden and its protectors forever bound to guard against intruders. Realizing that the snowman was the key to breaking the curse, we devised a plan to reseal the entity. Armed with the enchanted stones and the knowledge from the old journals, we ventured back into the cave under the cover of another fierce storm. The journey was perilous, the path treacherous with icy slides and hidden pitfalls. The air inside was thick with malevolence, each step forward met with unseen resistance. In the heart of the cavern, we found the snowman awaiting us, its presence more formidable than ever. The coal eyes glowed with an unholy light, and the air around it crackled with dark energy. The whispers of the lost souls echoed through the cave, their voices filled with pain and desperation. The snowman began to move, its form shifting and growing as it advanced towards us, intent on claiming more souls. We stood our ground, chanting the ancient incantations we had learned from the journals. The enchanted stones pulsed with energy, countering the dark magic that emanated from the snowman. The battle between light and darkness raged around us, the very walls of the cave trembling with the force of the confrontation. As the storm outside reached its peak, we felt the power of the curse weakening. The snowman let out a piercing scream, its form beginning to dissolve under the relentless assault of our combined efforts. But the entity was not so easily defeated. It retaliated with a surge of icy fury, attempting to drag us into the abyss of eternal winter. In a final, desperate move, I thrust the enchanted stones into the snowman's chest, channeling all our hope and determination into one last attempt to seal the curse. The snowman screamed, its coal eyes fading as the dark energy was pulled back into the cavern. With a blinding flash of light, the snowman vanished, leaving behind only the remnants of our effort and a sense of foreboding calm. Exhausted and battered, we stumbled out of the cave as the storm began to subside. The snowman was gone, and the disappearances ceased, but the cost was high. Our friends were lost, their souls forever bound to the curse we had sought to break. Our family was safe, but the scars of that Christmas would remain with us forever. In the aftermath, the village returned to normal, but the memory of the curse lingered like a shadow over our lives. We never spoke of that night again, but the haunted look in my parents' eyes and the silent warning in their hearts spoke volumes. The snow continued to fall each winter, a stark reminder of the night when darkness nearly consumed us all. Years have passed since that fateful Christmas, but the lessons remain vivid. Curiosity can unleash forces beyond our control, and the bonds of family and friendship are tested in the most dire of circumstances. Sometimes, when the snow begins to fall, I find myself staring into the distance, half expecting to see the coal eyes watching me from the silent, snowy landscape. The frostbound malevolence became a cautionary tale in our town, a story told in hushed tones around fireplaces and at holiday gatherings. It serves as a reminder that some places are better left undisturbed and that the past has a way of reaching out to claim the present. The snowman, once a symbol of childhood joy and holiday spirit, became a figure of fear and sorrow, embodying the eternal struggle between light and darkness. Every year, as Christmas approaches, I reflect on the sacrifices made and the friends lost. The enchanted stones are now kept hidden, a reminder of the thin line between creation and destruction. The cave remains sealed, guarded by the memories of that night and the hope that the curse will never again be unleashed. And so, as the first snowflakes begin to fall, I am reminded of the fragile balance that exists between our world and the unknown. The frostbound malevolence is not just a story of horror, it is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the lengths we will go to protect those we love. It is a haunting reminder that some curses can never truly be broken, only contained, and that the shadows of the past will forever dance in the winter snow. Story number 4. Endless Snow Road. I never believed in curses or supernatural traps. Growing up in a small town in Minnesota, winter was harsh but predictable. The endless snowstorms, the biting cold, the way the landscape transformed into a monochromatic expanse, these were the realities I knew well. But nothing could have prepared me for the nightmare my family and I endured one fateful Christmas night. It was December 24th, and we were returning home after a delightful vacation in Colorado. The trip had been a much-needed break from the chaos of work and daily life. My wife, Laura, our teenage son, Ethan, and our daughter, Lily, had all enjoyed the festive atmosphere of the mountain town, complete with twinkling lights and cozy cabins. The drive back was supposed to be routine, a few hours down interstate highways blanketed in snow. The weather had been steadily worsening, but we reassured ourselves it was manageable. The GPS navigator, a reliable device we'd used countless times, promised a clear route. Little did we know, that device would lead us into a labyrinth of terror. As dusk began to settle, the snowstorm intensified, reducing visibility to mere feet. The roads became slick with ice, and the wind howled like a living entity outside our SUV. Laura glanced at the GPS, noting the time left until we should reach home. "Just a little further," she said, trying to mask her growing unease. Ethan, ever the tech enthusiast, tapped on his tablet to check the weather updates. "It says the storm should start to ease up in about an hour," he reported, though his voice lacked conviction. But as the night deepened, the storm showed no signs of abating. Instead, it seemed to grow more aggressive, swirling snowflakes dancing chaotically outside our windows. The GPS began to malfunction, the screen flickering before stabilizing on a route we didn't recognize. "Wait," Why is it taking us down this road? I asked, my heart rate quickening. Laura leaned forward, her eyes scanning the unfamiliar path. I didn't enter any new destinations. It must be a glitch. Ethan attempted to reset the device, but it only caused more confusion. The screen now displayed a different route, leading us further into a desolate area surrounded by dense forests. Maybe it thinks there's a quicker way through here, he suggested, though his voice wavered. Reluctantly, we followed the GPS's new directions, the SUV struggling against the treacherous conditions. The road became narrower, flanked by towering pines that seemed to close in around us. Every turn we took only led us deeper into the wilderness, the storm pressing in from all sides. That's when we started seeing them, shadows flitting across our windows, indistinct figures that seemed to beckon us into the woods. At first, I dismissed them as tricks of the storm, mere illusions created by the swirling snow and dim headlights. But as minutes turned into hours, the apparitions became more persistent, their eyes hollow and pleading. "Did you see that?" Lily whispered, her voice trembling as she pointed to a shadow that lingered outside her window, its form barely human. Laura reached out, placing a reassuring hand on Lily's shoulder. "It's just the storm, sweetheart. Probably some branches moving in the wind." But the shadows didn't disappear. Instead, they began to grow more defined, their forms coalescing into ghostly figures that stared hungrily at us. The atmosphere inside the car thickened with an oppressive tension, the air feeling colder despite the heater struggling to keep up. Then came the footprints. Fresh, clear impressions in the snow outside our windows, appearing and vanishing within seconds. Each morning, we woke to find new sets of footprints leading into the forest, as if something, or someone, was trying to lead us deeper into the woods. Panic set in as we realized we were not just battling a natural storm, but something far more sinister. "This road, it's a trap," I muttered, my voice barely audible over the howling wind. "We need to turn back." But every attempt to reverse was thwarted by the storm. The roads we knew had been buried under meters of snow, leaving us stranded in this ghostly maze. The GPS had led us astray, and now, it seemed, we were prisoners of the endless snow road. As days merged into nights, the phenomena escalated. The shadows outside our windows became more aggressive, their forms contorting into grotesque shapes that clawed at the glass. Whispers filled the car, voices that seemed to seep into our minds, urging us to follow, to succumb to the darkness. One night, Laura vanished. We were all huddled together, trying to keep warm, when I realized she was gone. Panic erupted as we searched frantically, but there was no trace of her, only the snow-covered remnants of our campsite. The whispers had grown louder, more insistent, filling the car with a cacophony of despair. "Where is she?" Ethan cried, tears streaming down his face. I checked the GPS, but it now displayed a static image of the road, offering no guidance. "I don't know," I replied, my voice cracking under the weight of fear. "We have to keep moving." But moving felt impossible. The road seemed to loop endlessly, each path leading us back to the same desolate point. The shadows outside grew bolder, pressing against the windows, their forms almost tangible in their malevolence. Every night, another member of our group disappeared, swallowed by the very curse that bound us to this forsaken road. Lily was next. One evening, as we sat in the car, the snowstorm reached a fever pitch. The shadows outside swarmed our windows, their ghostly hands pressing against the glass, trying to pull us into the darkness. Suddenly, a deafening roar filled the air as the figure seemed to merge into a single, monstrous entity, its form a twisted amalgamation of all the apparitions we had seen. "Run!" I shouted, as the entity unleashed a wave of icy wind that shattered our windows and sent us sprawling into the snow. We stumbled through the storm, searching desperately for any sign of a way out, but the road remained a never-ending loop. Exhausted and broken, we realized that we were no longer merely lost in a storm but ensnared in an ancient curse designed to trap and consume the souls of those who dared to traverse the endless snow road. In our final hours, with only Ethan left, we huddled together in the remnants of our car, the entity's whispers echoing in our minds. "Face your fears," it hissed, its voice a blend of agony and malice. Ethan, his face pale and hollow, looked at me with a resolve I had never seen before. "We have to confront it," he said, his voice steady despite the terror that surrounded us. It's the only way to break the curse. Summoning the last of our strength, we decided to perform a ritual we had found in one of the old journals we had discovered during our search. The journal, a relic from the village that had once existed here, detailed the origins of the curse, a vengeful witch betrayed by the villagers, her spirit bound to the road to ensure no one would escape her wrath. We have to rebind her, I said, clutching the journal tightly. We need to perform the ritual as described. With Ethan by my side, we faced the entity, now a towering specter of ice and shadow. The whispers grew louder, threatening to overwhelm our minds, but we focused on the words of the ritual, reciting them with unwavering determination. As we chanted, the storm seemed to respond, the snow swirling violently around us, the wind howling like the spirits of the damned. The entity lunged at us, its icy fingers reaching out to consume our souls, but the power of the ritual held strong. A blinding light erupted from the journal, pushing back the darkness and forcing the entity into retreat. With a final, anguished scream, the entity dissolved into 1,000 snowflakes, each one vanishing into the storm as the curse began to lift. The storm outside subsided, the snow settling into a peaceful silence as dawn broke over the horizon. Exhausted and shattered, I looked around, realizing that Ethan was gone. He had sacrificed himself to complete the ritual, his soul binding the witch's spirit once more and ensuring that the curse would never again claim another victim. As I walked back through the now calm road, the memories of that night etched into my very being, I knew that the endless snow road would remain a silent sentinel against those who dared to seek refuge in its treacherous embrace. The curse had been broken, but the price was immeasurable, a family torn apart by forces beyond our understanding, forever haunted by the shadows that lingered in the snow. Years have passed since that harrowing Christmas, but the memory remains vivid. Each winter, as the snow begins to fall, I find myself reflecting on the sacrifices made and the friends lost. The endless snow road became a cautionary tale, a story told in hushed tones around fireplaces, warning others of the dangers that lie in forgotten paths and the darkness that can be unleashed by curiosity. Sometimes, when the wind howls just right, I swear I can hear Ethan's voice, urging me to stay strong, to remember the courage it took to face our fears. And though the road is now silent, the shadows of that night remain a haunting reminder of the thin line between survival and surrender, and the eternal struggle against the malevolent forces that seek to claim us. Story number 5. Dollhouse in the Woods. I never believed in the supernatural. Growing up in suburban Ohio, my life was filled with the ordinary rhythms of school, work, and weekend barbecues. But that all changed on a crisp autumn afternoon when my girlfriend, Emily, and I decided to escape the monotony of our lives with a picnic in the nearby woods. What we stumbled upon that day would haunt me forever. It was late October, the trees ablaze with hues of red, orange, and gold. The air was cool, carrying the earthy scent of fallen leaves and the promise of an early winter. Emily had insisted on the picnic, eager to enjoy the last of the warm weather before the chills set in. We packed a basket with sandwiches, fruit, and a bottle of wine, and set off towards Maple Grove Forest, a sprawling expanse of trees and winding trails just a short drive from our apartment. As we ventured deeper into the woods, the sunlight filtered through the canopy, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. The tranquility was soothing, a welcome respite from the constant buzz of city life. We found a secluded clearing near a babbling brook, perfect for our picnic. Spread out a blanket, we settled down, enjoying the simple pleasure of each other's company amidst nature's splendor. After we finished eating, we decided to explore a bit more before heading back. Emily, always the adventurous one, suggested we follow a narrow path that veered off from our original route. "Let's see where it leads," she said with a grin. I hesitated but relented, curious about what lay beyond the well-trodden trails. The path was overgrown, barely visible beneath layers of fallen leaves and branches. We pushed through the underbrush, the sounds of the forest enveloping us. After about half an hour of walking, we came upon something that made us both stop in our tracks, a tiny house, meticulously crafted entirely from dolls. At first glance, it looked like a whimsical miniature, a quaint cottage straight out of a fairy tale. But as we approached, the unease settled in. The house stood no taller than a foot, its walls composed of rows upon rows of porcelain dolls, each one intricately detailed. Tiny doors and windows were framed by the dolls' limbs, and miniature furniture was scattered throughout. The craftsmanship was astonishing, each doll placed with deliberate care. That's creepy, Emily whispered, her voice tinged with both fascination and fear. I nodded, feeling a chill run down my spine. Who would build something like this? We circled the dollhouse, taking in the eerie perfection. Each doll seemed almost lifelike, their glassy eyes staring blankly ahead. But what sent shivers down my spine were the faces. Each one bore a striking resemblance to people who had gone missing in our town over the past decade. Names like Jessica Miller, David Thompson, and Maria Lopez flashed through my mind. Do you think these are people? Emily asked, her voice barely audible. Before I could respond, a sudden rustling in the bushes nearby made us both jump. The wind picked up, swirling the fallen leaves around us, and the temperature seemed to drop. I glanced back at the dollhouse, noticing that one of the dolls had moved. Its head had turned slightly, as if observing us. That's not possible, I muttered, more to myself than to Emily. We stood there, frozen with fear, watching as the doll slowly turned its head to face us. Its eyes seemed to glow with an unnatural light, and a faint smile played on its lips. Emily grabbed my arm, pulling me back. We need to go, she said urgently. But when we turned to leave, the path we had taken was no longer there. Instead, a dense thicket of trees and underbrush blocked our way, as if the forest itself was conspiring against us. Panic set in as we realized we were trapped. Try the main trail, I suggested, trying to stay calm despite the fear gnawing at me. We frantically searched for any sign of the path we had followed, but the forest seemed to have swallowed it whole. The dollhouse stood there, a silent sentinel, its presence growing more menacing as the day turned to dusk. Shadows lengthened, and the once vibrant colors of the forest faded into a palette of grays and blacks. As night fell, the storm began. Snowflakes danced in the frigid air, whipping around us with increasing ferocity. The wind howled like a pack of wolves, and the temperature plummeted, making it impossible to stay outside for long. We huddled together, seeking warmth and comfort amidst the chaos. But the storm was not the only thing we had to worry about. The dollhouse seemed to come alive under the cover of darkness, its dolls moving in synchronized patterns. We could hear faint whispers, like the voices of the missing, echoing through the trees. Each whisper was a name, a cry for help, a plea to be released from their frozen prison. Did you hear that? Emily asked, her eyes wide with terror. I nodded, my heart pounding. We need to get out of here. As if on cue, a figure emerged from the darkness, moving towards us with an otherworldly grace. It was a woman, her eyes hollow and her movements stiff, like a puppet controlled by invisible strings. She approached us silently, stopping just a few feet away. Why are you here? She demanded, her voice hollow and echoing. Before we could respond, another figure appeared, this one a man, his expression twisted with anger and sorrow. The apparitions began to multiply, surrounding us with no way to escape. Their eyes bore into us, and their whispers grew louder, more insistent. We belong here, they chanted in unison. Stay with us. Desperation set in as we realized the truth. We were caught in a supernatural trap, a curse designed to ensnare the souls of the lost and unwilling to let them go. The dolls in the house were not just statues, they were vessels for these tormented spirits, forever bound to protect their frozen home. We have to fight it, I said, trying to muster the courage to protect my family. We can't let them take us. But as the apparitions closed in, their hands reaching out to grasp us, the dollhouse began to shake violently. Snow swirled around us, and the house seemed to pulse with dark energy. The whispers turned into screams, and the apparitions' faces contorted into expressions of rage and pain. In that moment, Emily grabbed my hand, and together, we turned back towards the dollhouse. We need to destroy it, she whispered, her voice breaking. With trembling hands, we approached the house, dodging the grasping hands of the spirits. The wind howled louder, and the temperature dropped further as we neared the eerie structure. I picked up a nearby branch, using it as a makeshift weapon, and prepared to strike. But as I swung the branch towards the dollhouse, it passed right through the dolls as if they were made of mist. The house began to crumble, pieces of snow and ice disintegrating into the air. The apparitions screamed in unison, their forms flickering and fading. Do it! Emily urged, desperation in her eyes. Summoning every ounce of strength, I grabbed the branch and plunged it into the heart of the dollhouse. There was a blinding flash of light, and the entire area seemed to freeze in time. The spirits wailed one final time before being pulled back into the dollhouse, their cries silenced as the house shattered into a million tiny pieces. The storm began to abate, the snow slowing to a gentle fall as the oppressive atmosphere lifted. The path reappeared before us, and we didn't hesitate to follow it, our legs numb from the cold but driven by the will to survive. We trudged through the snow, the memories of the haunted dollhouse etched into our minds. When we finally emerged from the woods, the first light of dawn was breaking over the horizon. Exhausted and broken, we made our way back to civilization, the horrors of that night lingering like a dark shadow over our lives. In the weeks that followed, we tried to move on, but the experience left deep scars. Sleep eluded me, and every time the snow began to fall, I was reminded of the voices and the haunted eyes that had tried to claim us. Emily and I grew closer, our bond strengthened by the ordeal we had endured together. But the dollhouse was not the end. In the days that turned into months, we discovered that the curse had not been fully broken. The spirits we had faced were merely the beginning, their anger festering beneath the surface, waiting for another chance to unleash their torment. One evening, as we sat by the fireplace, a knock echoed through our home. Startled, I looked up to see a figure standing in the doorway. It was a woman, her eyes hollow and her expression sorrowful. "You destroyed the house," she said softly. "But the curse remains. There are more lost souls who still need peace." Before I could respond, she vanished, leaving behind a cold chill that settled over the room. I realized then that our battle was far from over. The dollhouse had been a conduit for something much darker, a force that thrived on fear and desperation. Determined to protect my family and put an end to the curse once and for all, I delved into the history of the dollhouse and the forgotten village it once belonged to. Old records and journals revealed the tragic story of a witch betrayed by her community, her spirit bound to the snow-covered woods, ensuring that no one would ever escape her wrath. Armed with this knowledge, Emily and I embarked on a quest to uncover the truth and find a way to lift the curse. We sought out local historians, spiritualists, and anyone who could shed light on the dark magic that had ensnared us. Each step brought us closer to understanding the magnitude of what we were up against and the sacrifices that might be required to break free. As the years passed, the dollhouse remained a legend, a ghost story told around campfires to warn others of the dangers lurking in the snow. But for Emily and me, it was a constant reminder of the thin line between reality and the supernatural, and the lengths we would go to protect those we loved. Every winter, as the first snowflakes begin to fall, I find myself staring into the distance, half expecting to see the haunted eyes of the spirits watching us from the shadows. The memory of that night remains vivid, a testament to the power of love, courage, and the unyielding human spirit in the face of unspeakable horror. The dollhouse in the woods became more than just a haunted house. It was a symbol of our resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can shine through, guiding us back to the light. Story number 5. The Unending Forest. I still wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, hearing the echoes of whispers carried by the wind. The nightmares always begin the same way, our family vacation turning into an unending struggle for survival in a forest that refuses to let us go. My name is Jack Thompson, and this is the story of how a holiday getaway in the Colorado wilderness became our descent into madness and terror. It was December, and the Colorado Rockies were cloaked in a pristine blanket of snow. My wife, Laura, our teenage son, Ethan, and our 8-year-old daughter, Lily, had been looking forward to this winter retreat for months. The plan was simple: escape the chaos of our everyday lives, enjoy the serenity of nature, and create lasting memories. We rented a cozy cabin deep within Evergreen Forest, a place known for its breathtaking beauty and, according to some local legends, its eerie stillness during the winter months. The drive to Evergreen was picturesque, with snow-covered pines lining the winding roads and the occasional deer darting across our path. The cabin itself was charming, with rustic wooden beams, a stone fireplace, and large windows that offered stunning views of the surrounding wilderness. We spent the first days settling in, enjoying hot cocoa by the fire, and taking leisurely walks through the forest, marveling at the untouched beauty of nature. On the second day, the weather took a turn for the worse. Dark clouds rolled in, and the wind began to howl through the trees, bringing with it a relentless snowfall. Laura suggested we stay indoors, but Ethan and Lily were eager to continue exploring. Reluctantly, I agreed, thinking a short hike wouldn't hurt. Little did we know, this decision would change everything. We ventured deeper into the forest, following a narrow trail that led us away from the safety of the cabin. The snow was falling harder now, making it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. The path became less defined, and soon, we realized we had lost our way. Panic set in as we tried to retrace our steps, but every direction we took seemed to lead us back to the same spot. Maybe we should head back to the cabin, Laura suggested, her voice shaky with fear. No, we'll find another way, I insisted, trying to keep my voice steady. But the deeper we went, the more disoriented we became. The forest seemed to shift around us, the trees looming taller and the shadows growing longer, even in the daylight. As night began to fall, the temperature plummeted, and the snowstorm intensified. We hurried back towards the cabin, but the forest was no longer welcoming. The once beautiful landscape now felt oppressive, the howling wind sounding like mournful cries. Just when we thought we couldn't take it anymore, we stumbled upon a clearing. In the center stood an old, decrepit cabin, its windows dark and foreboding. Desperate for shelter, we approached the cabin, its wooden door creaking ominously as we pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. The fireplace was cold, and the furnishings were covered in thick layers of snow and ice. But it was better than being out in the storm. We decided to stay the night, huddling together for warmth and trying to make the best of the situation. As we settled down, strange things began to happen. Faint whispers echoed through the cabin, voices barely audible over the storm outside. Shadows danced on the walls, moving in ways that defied logic. Lily clutched my hand, her eyes wide with fear. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Stay calm, sweetie," I replied, trying to reassure her. "It's just the wind." But the whispers grew louder, more distinct, as if someone, or something, was trying to communicate with us. Laura tried to light a fire in the stone fireplace, but the logs refused to catch fire, as if an invisible force was preventing it from burning. Around midnight, the true horror began. The cabin seemed to come alive, the walls shifting and twisting, the floorboards creaking under unseen weight. The whispers turned into mournful wails, and the temperature dropped to an unbearable chill. Suddenly, the door slammed shut, locking us inside. Panic erupted as we realized we were not alone. Figures began to materialize out of the shadows, ghostly apparitions of people who had once lived in or passed through this forest. Their eyes were hollow, their expressions twisted with sorrow and anger. They moved towards us with an ethereal grace, their presence filling the room with an overwhelming sense of dread. "Leave us alone," one of the apparitions moaned, her voice echoing like a distant storm. "We're not here to harm you," Laura pleaded, tears streaming down her face. But the spirits were relentless, their cries growing louder as they closed in around us. Ethan tried to run, but the door wouldn't budge. The apparitions reached out, their icy fingers grazing our skin, drawing us into a nightmarish vision of the forest. Desperate to survive, I grabbed Lily and Laura, pulling them away from the spirits. "We have to fight back," I shouted, searching for a way to break the curse that held us captive. Remembering the local legends, I realized that the forest was cursed by a witch who had been betrayed by the villagers centuries ago. Her spirit, bound to the forest, sought revenge by trapping the souls of those who dared to enter her domain. "We need to find her," I told Laura, my mind racing. "The legends say there's a way to lift the curse." The apparitions began to chant, their voices blending into a haunting melody. I remembered the old journals we had found in the attic of our cabin, filled with tales of the witch and her dark magic. One entry mentioned a ritual that could appease her spirit and break the curse, but it required great courage and sacrifice. Determined to save my family, I led Laura and Lily deeper into the cabin, searching for the necessary items to perform the ritual. We found an old, dust-covered book hidden in a corner, its pages yellowed with age. The instructions were clear: offer a heartfelt apology and a token of peace to the witch's spirit. As we prepared the ritual, the storm outside showed no signs of relenting. The apparitions grew more aggressive, their cries echoing through the cabin like the wails of the damned. Laura and I took turns reciting the incantations, our voices trembling but resolute. We placed the token, a small, carved wooden figure of a dove, on the altar as a symbol of peace. "We're sorry for intruding," I chanted, my heart pounding in my chest. "We mean no harm. Please, let us go." A blinding light filled the room, and the apparitions began to fade, their forms dissolving into mist. The storm outside seemed to calm, the howling wind giving way to a gentle silence. The temperature rose, the oppressive chill lifting as the curse was broken. Exhausted but relieved, we stumbled out of the cabin as dawn broke over the horizon. The storm had subsided, and the forest was bathed in the soft light of morning. We found our way back to the main trail, the path now clear and inviting. As we walked home, the memories of that night lingered, a haunting reminder of the darkness that once enveloped us. But our ordeal was far from over. As we reached the edge of the forest, we noticed something unsettling. Each of us had been touched by the spirits we had encountered. Ethan's eyes held a sadness beyond his years, and Lily clung to me with a fear that words couldn't express. Laura and I shared a silent understanding. We had faced our greatest fears and survived, but the scars would remain forever. Years have passed since that fateful Christmas, but the memories remain vivid. The snow continues to fall each winter, a stark reminder of the night when we were trapped in a nightmare. Sometimes, late at night, I catch glimpses of shadowy figures moving among the trees, their eyes watching us from the darkness. The unending forest became a cautionary tale in our town, a story told in hushed tones around fireplaces and at holiday gatherings. It serves as a reminder that some places are better left undisturbed, and that the past has a way of reaching out to claim the present. Laura and I have tried to move on, but the experience has left an indelible mark on our lives. We keep the old journal safe, a testament to the ordeal we endured and the strength it took to overcome it. Every winter, as the first snowflakes begin to fall, we reflect on that night, grateful for the love and courage that kept us together. But peace was short-lived. One winter, a new family moved into town, unaware of the dark history that lay hidden within the evergreen forest. They decided to embark on a similar vacation, seeking the same solace and beauty that had once drawn us there. I watched with a sense of dread as they ventured into the forest, the snow swirling around them like a shroud. The cycle had not been broken, only delayed. The witch's curse remained, waiting for new souls to claim, her spirit forever bound to the unending snow and the haunted woods. The whispers of the past echoed through the trees, a constant reminder that some curses are eternal, and some forests never let you go. Our encounter with the unending forest taught us valuable lessons about respect, fear, and the unknown. It reminded us that curiosity can lead to unimaginable horrors, and that sometimes, the most peaceful places hold the darkest secrets. The memories of that Christmas night continue to shape who we are, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the lengths we will go to protect our loved ones. As I sit by the fireplace on chilly winter nights, the shadows dancing on the walls, I can't help but feel a connection to the spirits that once tormented us. They are part of us now, lingering echoes of our shared ordeal. The forest, with its endless snow and hidden dangers, remains a place of mystery and fear, its curse unbroken and ever-present. We learned that some paths should never be taken, and some places should remain untouched by human hands. The unending forest is a place where the past and present collide, where the spirits of the lost wander forever, and where the snow never truly ceases to fall. It stands as a silent guardian, ensuring that the witch's curse continues to claim new souls, trapping them in an eternal winter of sorrow and regret. Our family survived, but we carry the weight of that night with us every day. The lessons learned in the heart of the cursed forest have made us stronger, more united, and infinitely more cautious. We are forever changed by our encounter with the supernatural, our lives intertwined with the dark magic that resides within the evergreen forest. And so, each year, as the snow begins to fall, we remember the horrors we faced and the love that kept us alive. The unending forest remains a place of beauty and terror, a reminder that some curses are eternal, and some forests never let you go.